The delegation arrived at the boundary outpost on a clear morning, when the dust of the Veth corridor still hung low and orange between the canyon walls. 6 royal guards of the Solvane Empire flanked the diplomatic envoy, Councillor Miravel Duth, their ceremonial armor polished to a mirror sheen, their long-pulse rifles held at formal rest. They were not warriors by nature. The Solvane Royal Guard was an institution of pageantry as much as protection, selected for height, symmetry, and the particular stillness that impressed dignitaries. They had never, in the combined 400 years of their service histories, fired their weapons in anger. The outpost's single occupant met them at the gate. He was not tall, not by Solvane standards, not even by human ones. He stood perhaps a head shorter than the smallest of the 6 guards, with a face that had been weathered past the point of aging into something else entirely, something that had simply stopped caring what the sun thought of it. His jacket was not ceremonial. It was the faded dark green of the Terran Boundary Corps, a uniform so old that the patch on his shoulder had been restitched 3 times, each repair done in slightly different thread. His name tag read, SGT, Rook, D. He was holding a mug of something hot. "Counselor," he said, nodding once. "You're 2 hours early." Mira Velduth drew herself up. She was accustomed to being received with considerably more ceremony. "The situation has accelerated. We require immediate access to the boundary registry and a full escort through the Veth interior. There are Kale raiders within 6 kilometers of the secondary trade road." Sergeant Rook looked past her, toward the canyon. His eyes moved the way eyes move when they've looked at horizons for a very long time. "I know," he said. 12 of them. They've been sitting on the ridgeline since yesterday." The guard shifted. Myra's aide whispered something urgent. She pressed her lips together and said, slowly, as if to a child, "Then you understand the severity. We need to move. Now." The registry takes 40 minutes to pull and authenticate. The interior road takes 3 hours on foot. You'll overnight at the midpoint shelter. He turned and walked back inside. "Come in. I'll make more tea." They were 20 minutes into the authentication process when the proximity alarm sounded. It was not a polite sound. It was the sound of something designed by engineers who had never once confused urgency with comfort. A flat, repeating tone that filled the outpost like a physical pressure. Myra's aide dropped his data scroll. 2 of the guards raised their weapons. Sergeant Rook looked at his screen, took a long sip of tea, and stood up. "Kale," he said. "They moved early. Someone must have tipped them we had company." He crossed to the weapons locker with the unhurried motion of a man retrieving tools from a drawer he knew well. He pulled out a battered long rifle, a bandolier, and a second handgun which he tucked into the back of his belt without comment. "Guards, you stay with the counselor. Keep her inside and keep your heads down." "There are 12 of them," said the tallest guard. His name was Overseer Karas. He had 17 years of service. He had never heard an alarm like this one in an active context. "We cannot hold this outpost against 12 Kale raiders. We should retreat to the corridor entrance and call for." "I'm not retreating," Rook said. Karas stared at him. "Sergeant, you are one." Rook picked up the rifle. He checked it the way you check something you have checked 10,000 times, not looking at it, the hands knowing the ritual better than the eyes. "Registry's still running. I'm not leaving it open, and I'm not letting them burn this post." He walked to the door. "Stay inside." He went out. Karas moved to the window first. He did not know why he moved to the window. Duty said to stay with the counselor. Something older than duty, something lodged in the hinge of the jaw and the back of the throat, pulled him to look. The Kale were moving down from the ridge in a loose spread, 7 visible, with 5 more likely flanking through the dry gully to the east. They were Kale, meaning they averaged 2.5 meters in height, meaning their exoskeletal shoulder plating was proof against most commercial-grade weaponry, meaning they had been raiding the boundary regions for 6 years, and the combined Solvane peacekeeping force had managed to contain them mostly through the losing strategy of avoiding direct engagement. The one human soldier had walked out to meet them. He did not crouch behind the outpost wall. He did not call out or posture. He moved to a low rock formation about 30 meters from the gate and simply stopped there, and Karas watched him settle into a position that looked almost like rest, weight back, rifle across his knee, mug still somehow in his left hand. The Kale lead stopped advancing. The 2 forces looked at each other across the orange dust. Then the lead Kale, a raider captain by the triple scarring on his shoulder plates, raised his weapon, and the soldier raised his rifle in the same motion, and they held that tableau for 4 seconds. 4 seconds is a long time. Karas counted them without meaning to. The raider captain said something in Kale trade that Karas's translator rendered as *1 human. Boundary Corps. You will step aside. The soldier said something back. His translator must have been older because the Kale trade it produced was slightly archaic, formal, almost ceremonial in its structure. Karas caught only pieces of it. This ground. Registered boundary. I am the marker. You know what that means. There was a pause. The Kale captain looked at the insignia on the soldier's jacket. He looked at the rock formation. He looked at the gate behind the soldier. He said something to his second. The second said something back. Then, and Karas would spend a considerable number of quiet evenings trying to understand this, the raider captain took 2 steps back. It was not surrender. It was something more careful than surrender, something that acknowledged a specific and very old rule that Karas had never been taught, because Karas had been trained for courts and corridors, not for the boundary. The Kale withdrew to the ridgeline. They did not leave. They watched, but they did not come down. Sergeant Rook walked back into the outpost 40 minutes later when the registry finished authenticating. He set his rifle against the wall, sat down, and finished his tea. Mira Velduth stood in the center of the room. What did you say to them? She asked. Rook considered the question as if it were slightly less interesting than the bottom of his mug. Told them I was the marker. The marker. Boundary Corps operates under the Veth Accords. Old treaty, pre-empire, from when the Kale still had a council and the council still negotiated. One of the provisions is the marker clause. A sole defender who holds registered ground in the Accord's name can't be removed by force without the Kale voiding every protection the Accords give them, including their corridor rights, their raiding exemptions, their right of asylum on Kale Code blood disputes. He set the mug down. They need those protections more than they need this post. Karas had not moved from the window. You knew that. Going out there. You knew they would stop. Probably. Rook looked at him directly for the first time. His eyes were a color that was almost gray and almost green and mostly just very tired. There are 12 of them and 1 of me. The Accords aren't a guarantee. They're a weight I put on the scale and hope it tips right. He stood up, rolled his shoulder once, and began pulling up the registry results on the main screen. It tipped right. Karas looked back at the ridgeline. The Kale were still there, dark shapes against the orange stone, watching. Why didn't you run? Karas asked. When the alarm sounded. You could have retreated with us. It would have been defensible. This is my post, Rook said, without looking up. Running doesn't occur to me. It was not said with drama or heat. It was said the way you state something about the weather, a thing that simply is, that has always been, that requires no particular defense or decoration. Karas looked at the man's back for a long moment. 17 years of service. Courts and corridors. The particular stillness that impresses dignitaries. He had never, he realized, met a soldier before. He was quiet the rest of the afternoon, and when the delegation finally moved into the Veth interior, he walked close to the human, not for protection, but for something he could not name, some quality he wanted to be near, some understanding he was still turning over in his hands like a stone whose weight had surprised him. On the ridge, the Kale watched them go. They did not come down.